Shenouda Mansour. He is a General Secretary of the New South Wales Ecumenical Council. His topic today is God's promise to Abraham. Father Shenouda Mansour is a son of immigrants who came from Egypt in 1966. Educated in Australia, he received a B.Sc from University of New South Wales in 1986 and entered the banking industry. In 1991, he was chosen by his community into the priesthood to serve in Sydney. Since then, his interests have been on ecumenical, interfaith relations and education. He has a Master of Education from Sydney University and Masters of Art in Coptic Studies from Macquarie University. He is a part-time PhD candidate in education at Macquarie, focusing on identity, culture and language. He is currently the General Secretary of the New South Wales Ecumenical Council, looking after the state of New South Wales. Please give a warm welcome to Very Reverend Father Shenouda Mansour.
Beautiful, thank you very much indeed. Also like to give acknowledge the custodian owners of this land. I'm glad Sister Elizabeth found who they were. I couldn't find out, so I thought give the generic, ecumenical people of our nation, the first people of this great nation, past, present and future. Firstly, I want to thank the organisers to invite me to this wonderful event. And I represent the Christian tradition of the churches. And first of all, you can see I'm a Coptic Orthodox priest, a tradition of 2,000 years. St. Mark came to Egypt and brought the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, to Egyptians. I represent 16-member churches, both Protestant, free churches and Orthodox churches in New South Wales Ecumenical Council. And the first question here I want to ask is, what was God's promises to Abraham? And we can look at through the book of the Genesis, which is the first book of the Torah, and when we read the passage in chapter 12, we hear that how Abraham heard and responded to God's calling. And what, at the age of 75, we look at, well, I'm going to retire, I'm going to enjoy life, but at age 75, God told Abraham to leave his people, and he went and left. Let us see what were the promises. 1. A land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, make your name great. You shall be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, and I'll curse him who curses you. In you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Abraham departed and listened to God. And where he went, he built an altar to the Lord, where he may pray and worship God. As the Holy Book, the Bible writes, there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. We find this in Genesis chapter 12, verse 8. How relevant is the message Abraham received from God relevant in today's Australian society in 2015? We read of, I just gave one of the stories of Abraham. There are many stories, and I thank my others who made mention of the sacrifice and made mention of going into Egypt. And there are many stories about Abraham, dynamic. They're not static, they're dynamic, and we are able to understand relationship between God and man with God. How does God relate to us? Now, we all come from different lands. Now, when we look at around us here, all come from different lands. Now, I love Rabbi Nicole from this beautiful American accent, correct? Yeah. You can't pick it through. We all can pick it through. And many other accents around. So we all come from different lands. We all came on a journey that brought us from land of Egypt, myself, from land of the Middle East, from Pakistan, from India, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and all the other lands as well, and other parts of the world. We brought our religious traditions and customs and culture, identity and language. We also established altars in our respective traditions, a place of worship where we're able to practice and worship God freely without offense to our neighbour. We practice our religious festivals and ceremonies. We have become part of Australia's identity, that we call ourselves Australians. The third part, how long have I got to go?
Long time.
Oh, have I? Okay.
I'll let you know.
You tell me, where's Sister A? She told me to be careful.
Yeah.
The third part here, how should we deal with each other? How should we be respectful towards one another, and how should we celebrate the diversity of gifts that God has given us today? This is a challenging part of today's modern world. As Australians, we celebrate diversity. We celebrate multicultural, and we celebrate multi-religious. At the last census of Australia, the landscape of Australia had 225 ethnic communities, 125 different religions, and over 200 different languages. Our beloved God is saying to us, "You are all my children." We have three Abrahamic faiths here. God saying to you and me, to all of us here, "You are all my children." How can I separate and divide between you all? So therefore, collectively, we are God's children. If we are all God's children, it means that we all need to live in love. And I put on and add to what Sister Elizabeth Delaney said about love. How we need to live in love, how we need to live in harmony, how we need to live in peace. We all know what is happening overseas. Let us all respect each other by loving each other from the heart, not from the mouth, but from the heart, by receiving one another. Blessing, as God said to Abraham, if they bless you, I bless them. If you curse, I curse them. So here, God telling us we should bless each other, accepting each other as human beings. We came to this world with nothing, and I tell you something, I reassure you, we're all going to leave this world with nothing. But between these two axes of life, meaning the axis of birth and the axis of point of death, let us celebrate it while we are here together. Australia has given us much opportunity to express our lives of our faith, of our identity, of cultural and language. Let us not destroy it through radicalization. The power of life is love. The power of one is living together in love. Let me love you as Jesus Christ taught me to love you. For God is love. God loves humanity, that He gave His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to the whole world, that whoever believes in Him shall not die but have everlasting life. Finally, Abraham became known as the father of faith because of his faithful life in God. Let us be faithful as Abraham lived his life on earth, so that we may live a legacy. And I thank Rabbi, actually, one of my That's right. Rabbi Nicole made mention about legacy. So let us leave a life of legacy for others behind us, as faithful as Abraham was faithful. And he was so faithful that to sacrifice his only son Isaac, and have prepared a sacrifice in his place, that he brought, God allowed for a lamb to come through and use that lamb instead of his son Isaac. And when we read Hebrews in chapter 11, 3 verses. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he, meaning Abraham, dwelt in the land of promise in a foreign land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which was foundations, whose builder and maker is God. My friends, life is sacred. Let us enjoy God, the time that God's given us on earth, by loving one another. And we wish you a happy Eid on Thursday coming. May God bless you all, and thank you.
Congratulations, very Reverend Father Shenouda Mansour. You took exactly 10 minutes. No overtime.